Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. The scandal swirling around Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein has moved from the tabloids to the political pages tonight, and for good reason. There's no debate about Weinstein's behavior, no gray areas or room for conflicting interpretations. According to a new account in the New Yorker magazine, at least 13 separate women claim that Weinstein sexually assaulted or harassed them between 1990 and 2015. 4 say he masturbated in front of them. 3 accuse him of rape. Weinstein hasn't denied any of it. Indeed, the New Yorker has released tape in which he apparently confesses.
I'm telling you right now.
What do we have to do here?
Nothing. I'm going to take a shower. You sit there and have a drink. Water.
I don't drink. Can I stay on the bar?
No, you must come here now.
No.
Please.
No, I don't want to.
I'm not doing anything with you. Now you're embarrassing me.
I'm sorry. I cannot. No, yesterday was a kind of aggressive for me. I need to know a person to be touched.
I won't do a thing.
I don't want
do a thing, please. I swear I won't. Just sit with me. Don't embarrass me in the hotel. I'm here all the time.
I'm feeling very uncomfortable right now.
Please come in now. And 1 minute. And if you want to leave, when the guy comes with my jacket, you can go.
Yesterday you touched my wrist.
Oh, please, I'm sorry. Just come on. I'm used to that. Come on.
Are you used to that?
Yes, come in.
Not all accusations of sexual harassment are real. This one is. But the bigger scandal is the reaction to it, or the lack of reaction. Harvey Weinstein isn't just a movie producer, he's a political figure on the left, a major donor to the Democratic Party, a personal friend to countless liberal activists and politicians, all of which helps explain why the reaction from self-described defenders of women has been so muted. For the days after the story broke, Democrats in Hollywood and Washington seemed to freeze, unsure of what to say, hoping the whole thing would just die down and go away. It hasn't. Those actors who lecture you from the Oscar podium every year about their virtue and your lack of it, suddenly silent. Hillary Clinton traveling on a book tour whose whole purpose is to call out sexism in American society. She said not a single word about her old friend Harvey Weinstein for 5 full days. The truth is, Weinstein could never have gotten away with any of this without enablers like Hillary Clinton and the rest of the so-called creative community in Hollywood. They knew about his behavior. It was common knowledge in that world. The New York Times came close to running a story about Weinstein's harassment more than a decade ago, but pulled back at the last minute under political pressure, which tells you a lot. None of this was a well-kept secret. It now seems clear that hundreds of people knew or suspected what Weinstein was doing, but stayed silent about it. That should not surprise us because it is hardly the first time it's happened. Director Roman Polanski raped a child and fled the country, but that didn't stop him from getting work in Hollywood, nor did it stop Hollywood from giving him an Oscar for Best Director in 2003. A few years later, Harvey Weinstein himself led a petition asking the authorities to cut Polanski a break. That petition was signed by more than 70 prominent Hollywood figures. Meanwhile, Woody Allen has been dogged by sexual abuse allegations for decades, but that's done nothing to slow his steady output of films starring Hollywood's top actors. Once again, one of Woody Allen's biggest defenders was, take a guess, Harvey Weinstein. Weinstein told the LA Times in 1994 that Allen's scandals were basically irrelevant because he was, quote, a comic genius. Now, isolated incidents happen, but this is a trend. Sexual abuse is epidemic in Hollywood. The people in charge have covered it up and made excuses for it, in each case protecting the powerful from the powerless and the abused. It is time for the federal government to get involved. The Department of Justice should launch an immediate investigation into Hollywood's culture of systematic sexual abuse. There's ample precedent for this. Under the Obama administration, the Department of Education launched more than 300 investigations into schools across the country, ranging from Harvard all the way down to Cisco Junior College. All of them sought to expose and punish schools it said violated federal law by enabling cultures of sexual harassment and assault. The Department of Defense, meanwhile, has spent years trying to root out sexual assaults in the armed services. When Jerry Sandusky's crimes were exposed at Penn State, the federal government launched not 1, but 2 investigations into the failure of the school to discover and report his abuse. For years, Democratic senators have taken the lead in condemning institutional sexual abuse. They've held hearings, press conferences, issued statements. Now, because one of their own donors has been accused, they are silent. But there's no reason this ought to be a partisan issue. Democrats in Congress say they care about women. Now we'll see if they mean it. Joining us now is the host of The Ingram Angle, a Fox News show that premieres, and we're grateful that it's premiering on October 30th. It'll be at 10 p.m. Eastern, right here in the same building, by the way. Laura's also the author of a new book called Billionaire at the Barricades. Laura Ingram joins us tonight on the set.
Good to see you, Tucker.
Great to see you, Laura. The idea of a federal investigation into, sexual abuse in Hollywood seems a little out of left field, and then you see the context for it, which is ample. There have been a lot of investigations along these lines and in different sectors of our society and economy. Why not Hollywood?
Colleges, universities, corporate America,
Exactly.
and there's a lot of resources put into those investigations. There are a lot of young lawyers hired to work aggressively in those investigations, and when you really hear the comments of obviously the New Yorker piece and the now descriptions 20 years later from really powerful women who today are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, kind of finally come out and tell this story, I think a lot of young women kind of ask the question, how was this tolerated? How was not only this tolerated over decades, but if I had heard about it in 1999, which I did from friends who know him well. I didn't even, who am I? But I knew about it. So if I knew about it, everyone knew about it. So this idea that, oh, I'm shocked, I'm appalled. Come on.
But how could this have happened there? This didn't take place in some Trump voting zip code in West Virginia. This took place at the very center, the beating heart of American liberalism.
And feminism, American feminism. Where this is all about women are strong and powerful and diverse, and isn't this great to have women in all these positions? And first of all, women aren't in a lot of positions in Hollywood. They're not in top executive positions. I do think the way age is used to disqualify women from roles is disturbing. I frankly do think it's disturbing. And I think the pornification of the culture at the hands of a lot of these executives is something that our kids are dealing with, the fallout of that we're going to be dealing with for generations. This has been going on for decades. So I don't think, I can't imagine anyone's really surprised by this.
But how can you say with a straight face that you care about women when you abet and excuse and hide behavior like this?
Well, that went out. Yeah, but that went out the door, didn't it? With Roman Polanski, it went out the door when Bill Clinton raped Juanita Broderick, according to her, and she was a very extremely credible woman. Kathleen Willey, obviously Paula Jones. They stood by him. He was in the Oval Office with a 22-year-old girl.
But then why do they still wield moral authority when...
Well, they don't. Trump's called them out. He's called them to the carpet on this stuff. And
but they intimidate the hell out of corporate America.
Well, they do. And, they throw it back on Trump because of the Billy Bush tape and all that. But I think women now, today, especially today, they've gotten stronger. They've gotten smarter. I hope after all of this, when we say, well, let's have a conversation, let's have a real honest conversation about how all of this goes down and how when you have power and you have money and you have an Oscar dangling in the background, you can get away with a lot.
Yeah, and when you're giving money to the politicians.
And frankly, there are men and women who knew this was going on for a long time.
What I find confusing, though, is here you have Michelle Obama on tape describing Harvey Weinstein as a wonderful person. Now, even if you didn't know, I worked for Harvey Weinstein briefly. Not a wonderful person. That was really obvious. She sends her daughter to intern for him, and then for 5 days, the Obamas say nothing. How can that be?
Well, can you imagine if the shoe were on the other foot? They would be dragging Republicans through the mud every day. Where is your moral conscience? How about Jimmy Kimmel? Jimmy Kimmel has the self-anointed moral conscience of America. Trashing Trump after the Charlottesville, Obamacare, whatever it was. On every issue now, he's the pundit of the day. It took him a little time to come along to commenting on this as well. So, look, if you're going to be holding yourself out as this moral arbiter, okay, then I think everyone's flawed. I think there are a lot of hands that are unclean. To use that bad analogy,
yeah, but that's not something you hear from the Oscar podium.
Yeah.
You've written a book called Billionaire at the Barricades, which I think is really smart. And it puts the last election into a context, a continuum in American politics. How do you describe it?
It's a conservative populism that obviously Ronald Reagan really tapped into in 1976. Even Richard Nixon, when he talked about the silent majority, a return to law and order, he was very concerned about big media, big business. The bigness of corporations, political structures, bureaucracies. When those grow, individual freedom retreats, and we all become less free and less independent. So Donald Trump tapped into that long strain of conservative populism, which in the modern day was really invigorated by Reagan. And we really have not had a national victory since 2004, before Trump came along. George Bush went off the rails in 2006 with Harriet Miers and immigration amnesty, and Ted Kennedy, working with Ted Kennedy on the the Medicare Part D. So he went way beyond where I think people thought he was originally going to go, which was kind of a more pragmatic, a slightly populist conservatism. But Trump saw that opening and he just took it, and that was really smart.
Then if this is part of a long-standing tradition, and I think you make a really compelling case that it is, why was everyone in Washington so confused by this?
Well, they were stunned. Like, well, this guy won because of the Russians or Comey or Hillary's a bad candidate. What they didn't understand is that he won actually because of the issues. He was a little brash and sometimes he's kind of a wrecking ball, but the people were so sick of being kicked to the curb on issues of trade, deindustrialization in the Midwest, open borders, constant military intervention at the hands of Republican presidents, that they're like, look, he's our bully. We need someone to bully the bullies. And Trump came along and said, look, it's going to be America first in trade and foreign policy and deregulation. I'm going to put your interests first. And that was like startling for people to hear.
But why would it be? I mean, I think it's a brilliant book and it's a really smart point, but it also, if you think about it for 10 minutes, you might come to that conclusion. Why did nobody?
Yeah. Well, because there's a lot of money involved. Back to money. Money talks.
Yes.
And big donors with big interests like to keep wages low in the United States because they make more money. And from Margaret Thatcher to President Reagan to Donald Trump, they knew that if you crush small business in the United States, if you crush that middle class, the working class spirit that I came from, you crush that for long enough, something's going to blow. Yeah. And something is going to erupt in politics. And Donald Trump erupted onto the scene, and we'll see if he can take this over the finish line. There are a lot of barricades in front of him, that's for sure.
I can't believe you're coming to 10 o'clock. That's going to be great.
We're going to have fun.
We're going
to pass, like, we're not going to do the football, the Hannity football. I already told him we're not going to do that. We're going to have to pass something from box to box.
That's going to be awesome. Laura Ingraham, thank you.
Good to see you.
Hillary Clinton acts like a crusader against sexism. Of course, she's on book tour talking about it right now. But why did it take almost a week for her to respond to the allegations against her old friend Harvey Weinstein? Up next, we'll ask if she's become America's enabler-in-chief. Plus, it's been more than a week and we still know virtually nothing about the massacre in Las Vegas. Police can't even keep their basic timeline of events straight. It just changed again. What is going on? Something is going on. We'll talk it over with a security specialist coming up. I want to begin with a Fox News alert. Wildfires are consuming California wine country tonight. Fires in Napa, Sonoma, and Mendocino counties have killed 15 people, destroyed about 2,000 homes, and forced tens of thousands of residents to flee. More than 200 people are still missing, unfortunately. The worst of the fires could be still ahead. Thousands of firefighters on the scene struggling to contain it. It is huge and dangerous. The cause of those fires still under investigation. Arson has not been ruled out. We'll continue to update you on this sad and big story. Well, Hillary Clinton, as you know, if you have a television set, has routinely represented herself as America's great crusader against sexual harassment and abuse.
The whole world heard him talking about the terrible way he treats women.
It is not enough to condemn campus sexual assault. We need to end campus sexual assault.
We don't want a president who demeans women.
I take on the issues of sexism and misogyny and talk about it because we need to pull it out and put it in the bright light.
It's odd, then, that Clinton was so very slow, so slow that someone for her aides commented on it in public, in responding to the reactions against Weinstein. After 5 days, Clinton finally released a statement saying she was, quote, shocked and appalled by the allegations. CNN's Aaron Burnett pointed out that, quote, HRC spoke for 90 minutes last night, didn't mention Harvey Weinstein. She didn't give women a pass for not voting for her, but she gave him one. Maybe we shouldn't be surprised, though. In two of the biggest sexual harassment scandals of the past 3 decades, Bill Clinton and Anthony Weiner, Hillary Clinton was right in the middle. What's a third scandal where she failed to step up? In fact, she may be the enabler, it turns out. Richard Goodstein knows her well. She advised both of Hillary Clinton's presidential campaigns, and he joins us tonight. It's a little weird, don't you think? I mean, I'm not Sigmund Freud or anything, but someone who has made her signature issue, the treatment of women, is married to Bill Clinton, her chief aide is married to Anthony Weiner, and one of her closest personal friends is Harvey Weinstein. What is that?
Well, I mean, first of all, the premise for many of the points you just made in this build-up, frankly, were inaccurate. Let's take one example. Let's take one. He said she was in the middle of the Anthony Weiner scandal. Anthony Weiner went to jail for virtual intrusions on women. Donald Trump bragged about walking in on naked underage women. No, he bragged about it. He bragged about grabbing women.
Trump, look, I'm not here. Wait, stop. But I'm not here to defend Trump.
Good.
But I'm not a nationally famous feminist who's scolding the rest of us for mistreating women. She is, and that's a fair description, and you know it. Why the hell does she have the authority to speak like that when she is married to Bill Clinton, who has been credibly accused of sex crimes for real? She employed, she was close to Anthony Weiner by both of their descriptions, and her friend Harvey Weinstein has been accused of rape by 3 people, and she says nothing for 5 days?
Well,
what is going on? Sincerely, what's going on here?
Truly. Okay. First, this outrage would seem more genuine if the same outrage from the same people had been voiced when Donald Trump, again, bragged about sexual assault, okay?
That's fine.
I know it's not a Trump
you
segment.
can call me inconsistent or whatever, but it's not about me. I'm asking a question about her and the standards that she has set forth for the rest of us. What is going on?
So last week, when she spoke out against guns in Las Vegas, she was accused on this network, because I was on a segment about it, of coming out too soon. Now she's being accused of being too late. Look, there are life and death issues which Hillary Clinton talks about, which includes Puerto Rico, and includes climate change, includes gun safety, includes little things like nuclear war, okay? The fact that she didn't come out exactly when you would have wanted her to is hardly
Richard,
a crime.
That's a dodge, okay? I mean, let's be real. This is her signature issue, the treatment of women. She ran as the first credible female presidential candidate to break the glass ceiling. She blamed sexism for her loss. She has, as we played in our clips, repeatedly lectured the country on its mistreatment of women, and men like Harvey Weinstein in particular, for sexually harassing women. So it's not like it's not the law of the sea treaty. It's not totally out of left field. This is exactly where she lives every day.
Right. And when she did come out against it, what he did, incidentally, every single Democrat has distanced themselves from Harvey Weinstein, unlike every single Republican who stood by Donald Trump. Steve Bannon said, but had Kellyanne Conway not been there, that would have been lost.
So look, you're saying, I mean, I guess I'm just a little bit confused, because I sincerely thought this was the one issue she really seemed to care about. I don't think she's a genius or a profound abstract thinker, as I've said. But I think on this issue, the treatment of women, it seems heartfelt. She talks about it in every speech.
Right.
And that's why it's a little weird when the guy she rented a house next to in the Hamptons for the summer, who's raised more than $1 million for her, does this. Like, you think she would at least pipe up and say, you know what, this is wrong.
He makes movies. Donald Trump is the president. I'm sorry. And there's some irony that in some TV networks, there was behavior.
Is that really the answer, that Trump is bad?
No, of course, two wrongs don't make a right.
Oh, because you seem to be arguing that they do.
No, I'm just suggesting this outrage is faux outrage, because we didn't hear a word of it.
It's actually,
when it came to the guy.
In my case, it's not so much outrage, it's confusion. Like, how can you have a party that claims to protect women when here you have a rich and powerful person abusing the weak, and then defended by a larger group of powerful people, including Hillary Clinton?
No.
How does that happen?
But it's the defended part. Every single Democrat that's been heard on this has said, here's your money back, we're giving it to this charity or whatnot, in contrast to every Republican who stood by Donald Trump, accused of virtually
but by your own standards, you shouldn't be surprised, because the Republican Party is the party that's waging a war on women, but the Republican Party is the Democratic Party is its natural home, the party that protects them. I just find it, let me ask you a really simple question. Sure. Do you sincerely believe that in the 25 years she's known Harvey Weinstein, Hillary Clinton never heard one rumor about his treatment of women?
So Meryl Streep, we take as a credible person, said she didn't. She's actually in the movie industry. Hillary Clinton wasn't. Julianne Moore, in the movie industry, said she never heard a word of it. And you have to assume the Obamas knew, and in the face of knowing, put their daughter in there. I understand people don't think sort of things through very well, but to suggest that is a level of adult thinking that I don't even think.
I'm just suggesting that if you fancy yourself a moral leader, and the Obamas and Hillary Clinton certainly do, that you ought to call it as you see it.
And they did.
5 days
when the
later.
evidence came out.
Let me ask you this. Would you support a federal investigation into the culture of sexual abuse in Hollywood?
I would support looking at any number of, are we going to look at TV networks as well?
Yes, we've already had federal investigations
of
into
TV networks?
All kinds of
TV news networks, seriously.
Look, you have this, so you're saying that there needs to be a federal investigation of TV networks in order to investigate Hollywood? What are you saying? Why wouldn't you support that?
Here's what I think. I think, this is not going to be responsible, but here's what I actually think. I think Donald Trump is going after the courts. I think he's going after the press.
Oh, God.
And I think he's going after black athletes. And now Hollywood. Hallelujah. He's got his enemies list.
But it's not, Trump has not said word one about this. I'm suggesting.
We did. He said, I've known Harvey Weinstein. And why is he
hold
not?
on, stop. I'm asking you a very simple question.
Please.
We saw investigations into a range of higher institutions of colleges.
Yep.
On this basis, why wouldn't you support one into Hollywood?
I don't think
because they're donors?
I don't think we've seen investigations of institutions of higher learning because some professor abused the students. I really think that's
because there was sexual abuse. That was the allegation. The military, same thing. So it's okay to investigate the Marine Corps, but not Miramax? Like what?
No. I'm just saying I don't think we've had a single person's misdeeds.
You guys will defend your donors at all costs, I notice.
There are 100 donors to Donald Trump.
I should be a Democratic donor. You can do anything when you're a Democratic donor. Well, thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. After more than a week, facts remain elusive in Las Vegas. In fact, they're changing. There's no motive. Police don't even have a stable timeline of events. What is going on here? Something is going on here. We're going to talk to a security specialist about it next. Well, the mystery of the Mandalay Bay massacre grows deeper and more confusing. A week ago, the FBI avoided rushing to suggest a motive. They said, emphatically, they needed to wait for hard facts to come out.
We like to deal in facts. So theories are great, and everyone can have a theory. But I need to deal with facts. The sheriff needs to deal with facts. We're reliant on that to do our jobs. And so that's what we're going to focus on.
It was more like a scolding than a statement. And yet, after a week, even some of the established facts turn out to be completely false, weirdly so. Last night, police dramatically revised their timeline of the shooting. They said that Stephen Paddock actually shot a security guard 6 minutes before he began firing upon the country music concert. That's the opposite of what they first told us. For a week. Police still have no motive. They don't know why Paddock meticulously planned this attack, why he mysteriously stopped firing upon the crowd. Or they say they don't. Who knows what's going on here? That's why we wanted to talk to Dan Bongino. He's a former Secret Service agent, and he's been following this carefully. Dan, I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. That's not just an ancillary fact, a random fact of no significance. That's a central fact, because the original description, the timeline was this. He fires on the crowd. The security guard approaches the door. He stops firing because he sees the guard, shoots the guard, and then additional law enforcement come up. But that's not what happened at all. How could they have gotten that wrong?
Well, here's a little inside baseball here on how these investigations probably work and how they likely messed up the timeline here. I remember a credit card case. I had a credit card fraud case where the video camera in the store where we had seen one of the big fraudulent activities occur didn't marry up with the time on the actual credit card receipt. It's not really that uncommon. The problem, Tucker, I think here is in an era where distrust in government is notoriously heavy, I think you have to be really careful. And this is not, listen, I'm not Monday morning quarterbacking anything. We can all agree they're doing the best they can. But you have to be very careful with social media and a 24-hour news cycle putting those things out there, because it's, with this mistrust in government, people take it as, oh, are they hiding something now? And I don't think they are. I just think it was just an error. And that's what happens when the cell phone tapes and the casino cameras probably didn't line up.
I just don't see how they could have made that error, and I'm not convinced they're doing the best they can. I'm unsure of that. I want to believe in law. I mean, I obviously support and love law enforcement. I'm not against law enforcement. But how could they have gotten that wrong? So what they're telling us now is that before a shot was fired, that Paddock shot, I think Campos was the name of the security guard. So, yeah. I mean, the security guard would know that. He either came to the room because he heard gunfire or he didn't. So I don't know, how could you get that wrong? Unless I'm missing something, which I might be.
No, I think what's wrong with that portion of the story, too, is it extends the timeline out of the attack and opens up the inevitable question, which is in the post-Columbine era of active shooter mitigation, the active shooter response plan with most major police departments is now to respond directly to the threat. Now with this timeline extended, it opens up the natural question, well, why was he allowed to shoot for so long? I think I understand the reason why, though. Tucker, this was a suicide mission for the cops going into this. This guy had 223, 5.56 ammo. There is no ballistic shield or ballistic vest that's going to stop that. It would be like a hot knife through butter. Not only that, they were in what we would call in law enforcement a fatal funnel. A fatal funnel being a hallway where the bullets ricochet off the walls and hit you. These cops going in there were never going to make it to that doorway without a plan. You know, I know it doesn't make sense.
But I believe that completely, and I'm not faulting them. I mean, apparently he fired an enormous number of rounds through the door, so many that you could see through the door by the time he finished. I just still don't understand how you could transpose that timeline. It just actually doesn't make sense, just as a logic question. And it makes me wonder about why they got that wrong. If they did get it wrong, was it intentionally? And by the way, how could you have an investigation of this magnitude go on for this long without any indication of motive? I mean, I guess it's possible, but it does raise some questions, I think.
The motive part to me, and I think one of the mistakes here were the early press conferences when the information was incomplete. Because when it's incomplete, again, with the 24-hour news cycle and social media, people just run with it right away. But the motive question, Tucker, is the biggest enigma in this entire thing. This blows away every single model of targeted violence I've ever seen in my experience as a federal agent and a police officer. The case just doesn't make sense. It doesn't. You can throw all the books out after this. I mean, that's why there's no motive. He may have just been a sociopath.
Well, this stuff is fueling distrust in government, and I don't, you know, again, I have the utmost respect for law enforcement, but the way this is being handled is causing people to come up with alternative theories, and I hope they fix it really soon. Dan, thank you.
Yes, sir.
For that. President Trump has unveiled a detailed 74-point plan for reforming this country's immigration system. What does it mean for the border, for illegal immigrants, and for you? We'll take a look at that. Plus, British politicians are trying to derail a school tour by Katie Hopkins of the Daily Mail. Up next, she joins us to discuss what exactly they're so afraid of. Stay tuned. Well, the administration has unveiled a 70-point plan that, if passed, would dramatically overhaul our immigration policy in this country. The plan calls for building a border barrier wall, making deportations easier, particularly of criminal aliens, and creating a new system of legal immigration that prioritizes people with skills rather than just letting in extended family members on the basis of blood ties. Well, in return, the Trump administration says it's open to granting legal status to DACA beneficiaries. Democrats say the plan is unthinkably extreme somehow. Katie Hopkins is global columnist at dailymail.com, and she joins us tonight. Katie, it is great to see you. What could possibly be the complaints about the items I just listed? And I think we're fair in describing them. Why would someone be against those?
It's a crazy thing, you know. Trump's doing precisely the right thing here. He's trying finally to correct the massive presidential overreach by Obama in creating this Dreamer program. It reminds me very much of when my children do painting. They make the mess, but they're not there to tidy it up afterwards. I am. And Trump is like that. He's trying to tidy this up, put it through Congress, and make it actually legal and constitutional. And I think, secondly, he's then saying, once we've dealt with the dreamers that we have and we look after them and we've given Congress a time limit to make this happen, which is good, he's saying let's not let loads more people in. He's saying let's look after the ones we have. Let's look after also Americans. And I think that's a positive thing. If you just keep letting migrants in, you become like Germany. And nobody wants to become like Germany.
Except
and I think
the leaders
for me, I look at it a bit like a house. You know, I look after the children that I've got. I shut my front door and I lock it so that no baddies can get in and hurt my family. And then I also check my house out to check that none of my daughters have secreted any naughty boys in my kitchen, and I get them out as well. That's what Trump is delivering. And the Democrats cannot possibly be arguing for it, because otherwise they're going to lose the opportunity to protect the dreamers that they so want to protect.
Unless you didn't care about your kids, in which case you would leave the door open and attack anyone who tried to lock it. But yes. I'm just trying to understand the mindset here, and you deal with it, of course, in the UK, all through Western Europe. Your leaders want open borders. They resist any attempt to tighten up immigration. Why? What's the motive? It doesn't help the economy. What's the motive exactly?
It seems to be this idea that the globalist policy, this way of thinking that we're all one planet and we should move freely about it, that seems to be the accepted way of thinking right across Europe. And no matter how much our crime rates go up, no matter how many attacks we have, we keep letting them in. So Merkel's now saying she will reduce immigration into Germany, but still is going to accept another 200,000. And we've just had a court case here where a lady has had all her children here. She doesn't have a right to be here. Her children are in school and therefore she qualifies for all our benefits, and we have to find her a new house to put her 7 children in. So we do seem to prioritise those that come to us, and it's seen as a sort of humanitarian approach.
Right.
And we don't put European people first or people from the United Kingdom first. And I think what Trump's trying to do with his immigration plan is really put Americans first. And that's a real, you know, that's a magnificent thing for America, and something the Democrats should be embracing, because they have a very limited period of time in Congress to get this passed. So it'd be much better if they stopped talking about it and actually did some work instead.
The one thing both our continents have in common is our leaders really don't care about the people who live there at all. So you've announced plans to go on a tour of British schools and deliver a series of lectures on terrorism. A lot of leaders in the UK are calling on schools not to allow you on campus. Are you going anyway?
Yeah, so I get loads of emails from parents and from young people, my kind of 17 to 24-year-olds. They write to me because they don't get to say what they think in school anymore. In British schools, they teach that Trump equals hate. So they work that out, that Trump has a Muslim ban, that's intolerant, and therefore Trump equals hate. So they teach that to children aged 6 and 7. So I want to go around British schools. I am going around them in November 2017. It's the Stand Strong School Tour. And it's not about terrorism, Tucker. It's about asking children and students, so before they get to university, to stand up against being brainwashed by liberal teachers, and to really ask them to be taught, you know, how to think, not what to think. But unfortunately, of course, the government's come out against it. The Welsh Education Secretary has come out and said I shouldn't be allowed on campus. I've been banned by a city council altogether. But parents are now coming up because they want me to come into the schools. But I think my main message is that it's just because I'm a conservative woman, and I think also being white doesn't really help. I think if I was a transracial pescatarian with a diploma in Islamic studies, I'd be incredibly welcome across our left-wing schools all over the UK.
I would be surprised. Katie Hopkins, thank you for joining us, and good luck on tour. Tell us how it goes.
Thank you, Tucker.
President Trump calling for the NFL to lose its privileged status in American law. We'll talk about that with an author of a new book on the president's life philosophy. Plus, we'll show you the latest haiku from CNN's poet laureate, Chris Cuomo. If you missed that, you will be diminished. So don't. We'll be right back. Two weeks ago, CNN's poet laureate Chris Cuomo posted a video on Facebook that made us question the basic nature of reality. And then he went farther, taking this country into new frontiers of weirdness with a series of remarkable thumbs-up gestures. But America's most prolific Facebook philosopher isn't finished yet. Today, Chris Cuomo posted this.
Let's start with what matters most. The hashtag is Stand Firm. FIRM is an acronym. Fight injustice, reinforce morality. This is what we do in our everyday lives. This is what is required of us as citizens, and it's certainly what the mandate should be for our government. It's not partisan. It's just practical. You should try to fix things that are inherently wrong, like what's happening in Puerto Rico. It's not about a congratulations event for the President of the United States because it's still in crisis. It doesn't mean the first responders aren't killing themselves. We know they are. We've been there and seen the hard work in progress, but so much more needs to be done. The kerfluffle. This matters. Why? Not because of political intrigue or name-calling. That's the way the President deals with it as sport. Can he get things done? Not if he alienates everybody. I know this bothers some people. I know that the pundits will yap and come after me about it. I worry about what people say to my face. You should do the same thing. Everything else is just noise. Hashtag Stand Firm.
I just can't get enough. What does it mean? Who knows? Someday, advanced supercomputers will be able to decipher what Cuomo was saying and probably use those revelations to bring humanity to new and higher plane of existence, and we look forward to that. For the time being, though, we mere mortals can only gaze in awe, dumbstruck awe, like Moses before the burning bush or a golden retriever before a washing machine. Just can't get enough. President Trump's rift with the NFL is only deepening with time. Less than 10 hours after Congressman Matt Gaetz came on our show and called for eliminating tax breaks for pro sports leagues, the president tweeted this: "Why is the NFL getting massive tax breaks while at the same time disrespecting our anthem, flag, and country? Change tax law!" Exclamation point. What did he mean? Well, Chris Bedford is the editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller News Foundation. He just wrote a brand new book, which is hilarious and smart. It's called The Art of the Donald, Lessons from America's Philosopher-in-Chief. Chris Bedford joins us tonight. Chris Bedford, great to see you.
Great to see you, Tucker.
So you've really systematically thought through the president's operating philosophy. You've kind of broken it down into a lot of categories. But given the knowledge that you have, what do you make of that tweet this morning?
Attacking the NFL?
Yes.
Well, he's managed to hold this issue and make it a phenomenal thing. He's a great communicator. I've got a chapter in the book called How to Get Your Message Out, and it breaks it down into how basically Donald Trump does. One, he keeps it really simple. It's about the flag. It's not about this. It's not about the police. It's not about Ferguson. It's not about free speech. It's about respecting the flag and standing for the military. Dude, you got to redefine things on your terms. Don't let them do that. You have to attack, and never relent. I think that's what we saw this morning with Trump attacking the tax status of the NFL. And finally, you have to just bring it across the finish line, exactly like he's done. Donald Trump is controlling this debate. He's basically won this debate. And the NFL now looks like a bunch of extremely wealthy, they are extremely wealthy, a $10 billion a year league. And they're going to lose this one, I think, based on the merits and based on how Donald Trump has changed this entire conversation.
So you're taking the president's public statements and behavior and basically extracting from them a life philosophy for every category of life, including food. So what's the sort of culinary philosophy of the president?
Eat like a normal person. Eat what you want to eat. The entire time, Tucker, when we were following the candidates around Iowa, New Hampshire, New York, you see John Kasich trying to eat this nasty food out of a deli with gravy going everywhere. You see John Kerry trying to eat pizza with a fork and knife or get the wrong cheese on his cheesesteak. You never saw that with Donald Trump. We saw Donald Trump walk into a steakhouse in New Hampshire, and we saw him the next morning walk into a diner in New Hampshire on Election Day in a fancy Italian suit with a red trucker hat on. And all these working class folks and New Hampshire voters who were there to see him, they fell in love. And after the cameras were over and after you and Fox and Friends had moved on, he still sat there eating pancakes and yucking it up with these people because he's comfortable in his own skin. He'll eat fast food. He'll wear a nice suit. And no one ever doubts him for that because that's who he is. He's a legitimate person and it's not poll tested.
No, it's not. He eats Three Musketeers, which I judge a little bit. I mean, I obviously go with Snickers, but whatever. Interesting. So do you think if you applied the lessons that you've taken from his life, that you'd be more successful? Like, what would you be like if you put the Trump life philosophy into practice?
I think he'd be much more successful. The reason for this, the reason why Trump, I think, is so successful is he hasn't started out with a lot of the same great strengths that he did against some of his opponents had. For example, Jeb Bush, he had millions of dollars, he had all the consultants you could need, he had the ground game, he had the ad game. Donald Trump didn't have that stuff. He decided to go a different route. He decided to change the game. He threw out the rule book. Pundits and politicos and politicians couldn't figure out a single step of it, and he beat them. And everyone says, you know, and it's true, he started out with some money when he came to Manhattan. He didn't start out with skyscraper Manhattan money. He started out with outer boroughs real estate money and some political connections. Everyone doubted him. He broke the rules. He made it his own way. He built glass higher than was expected. And because of that, Donald Trump, by going around and capitalizing on his strengths, has managed to rise to the most famous person in the world, a big goal of his, president of the U.S., head of the GOP, a billionaire with a good family. There's some lessons to learn.
He liked your book. He tweeted about it this morning. I think it was his first of a wave of early morning tweets, but it was about your book. Chris Bedford, author of the new book on Trump's life philosophy. Great to see you.
Great to see you.
Coming up, the FBI has declared a new type of extremism in America, a whole new category. We'll tell you what it is next. The FBI says there's a new terror threat in America, and it won't surprise you if you've been paying attention to the number of police officers assassinated in the last few years. It's on the rise. In a new report by the FBI's Anti-Terror Division, agents warn that America faces a new domestic terror threat from, quote, black identity extremists who become violently radicalized against the police since the death of Michael Brown in Ferguson 3 years ago, an event that was relentlessly politicized by the Obama administration. The report says those extremists, quote, proactively target police and openly identify and justify their actions with social political agendas commensurate with their perceived injustices. In other words, the political rhetoric of Black Lives Matter now flows from the barrel of a gun, and that's a bad thing. It also makes you wonder why so many Democratic politicians endorsed that group. Words matter. That's about it for us tonight. Tune in every night at 8 to the show that is the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. DVR it if you haven't already. Tomorrow night, a great show. Big show. The great Mark Stein is our guest. We'll also have a man who is taking on Maxine Waters in her congressional race. You want to hear from him. He campaigns with a mariachi band, and they'll be here too, because you can't make it up. Good night from Washington. Our friend Sean Hannity in New York. He's next.